Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. In today's tutorial, we're making a cute textured tunic featuring the lovely almond stitch, a groovy side detail, and 3/4 length sleeves. Grown up pixie vibes. Speaking of, no matter your vibe, we've got a pattern for you. You see, we have hundreds of the easiest crochet tutorials and patterns with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 530 grams of yarn. That's 1,165 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you prefer standalone books or in a series. I lean more towards series, but I do like both. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making a chain that is in multiples of 8 that starts 1 inch underneath our underarm down to our waist. Now I need roughly 9 inches or 22 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 40. And I actually already have this portion all completed, so I'm just going to be doing a small sample size with you. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 3. Now that chain 3 doesn't count as a stitch. That's our turning chain. Then we're going to start this off with an increase, and the increase is going to be 1 double, 1 half, and 1 single crochet all into that first chain. So starting with the yarn over and into that chain that we blocked off, or the 4th chain from our hook, we're going to bring our hook down, into that chain, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, that is our double crochet. Into that same chain, insert with a half double crochet, so pull through 3, and then once more into that same chain, insert with a single crochet, and that is going to be our increase. Then from here we're going to do our almond stitch, but since we started off the row with an increase, it's going to be done just a little bit differently. So just into that following chain, we're all going to start with just 1 slip stitch. So insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through both loops on our hook. Now when we do our slip stitch, we want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly, otherwise the following row will be a little too tight to work into. But after we have that 1 slip stitch, we're then going to do 4 half double crochets. So yarn over, into that following chain, insert with 1 half double crochet. Into that next chain with our second, next chain with our third, and next chain with our 4th. After our 4 half double crochets, we're all going to do 4 slip stitches. So into that next chain, insert with 1. Into that second chain, insert with your second. Next chain with our third. Next chain with our 4th slip stitch. From here, all we're going to do is repeat 4 half double crochets and 4 slip stitches till we all have 2 chains left. We've made our way down, leaving the last 2 chains. Now the last set of stitches that we all should have done should have been 4 half double crochets. Now we need to end our row off with an increase as well. So what we're going to do is basically mirror how we started off this row. So into that second to last chain, we're going to do 1 slip stitch. Then into that last chain, another increase, which is going to be 1 single, 1 half double, 1 double crochet. So into that last chain, insert, starting with a single, into that same last chain with a half double, into that same last chain with a double crochet. Now everyone's row 1 is complete. We should have 4 more stitches than chains that we made, and we do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the edge of this row, just so we know that this portion, so the edge with the tail, is going to be the top of this piece. So now that we have our stitch marker into place, let's all get started on our row 2. So getting started on our row 2, we're all going to chain 3, that's our turning chain, and flip our work. Now everything is already worked within the back loops. So we are still going to need to start and end our row with an increase. So into that first stitch's back loop, we're going to insert into that back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from us, with 1 back loop double crochet, into that same first stitch's back loop with a half double, and same first stitch's back loop with a single crochet. That is our increase. Once our increase is completed, we are now going to do 3 back loop slip stitches. So into that first stitch's back loop, insert, pull through everything. There's our first back loop slip. There's our second back loop slip. And then here's our third back loop slip. Then from here, we're going to be putting 4 back loop half double crochets. So yarn over. Into that next stitch's back loop with 1 half double. Next stitch's back loop with a second. Next with a third. Next with a fourth. Then 4 back loop slip stitches. From here, we're going to continue on with our 4 back loop halves, 4 back loop slip stitches till we then have 4 stitches left. We're at the end of our row 2, and now we should all have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches left. Now we're going to close off the row, mirroring the beginning of the row. So we're going to start with 3 back loop slip stitches. So there's my first, there's my second, there's my third, and into that last stitch with an increase. So a back loop single, back loop half, back loop double, all into that last stitch. So we are back. Now that we have our first 2 rows completed, we're going to get started on our row 3. As a really quick tip for this underarm portion for this piece, it is going to be basically a 2-row repeat. So we're basically just redoing these 2 rows all within the back loops. But when we're doing almond stitches all together, it is a 4-row repeat. So I'm just going to be doing the following 2 rows with you guys, just to remind you guys how we're going to do the increases on both ends. But for the rest of the piece, it will be a 4-row repeat. So to get started on our row 3, we're all going to chain 3 and flip. Starting off with our increase, it's going to be 1 back loop double, 1 back loop half, 1 back loop single crochet, all into that first stitch. Then, just like our row 1, 1 back loop slip stitch. Then repeat 4 back loop halves, 4 back loop slip stitches till we all have 2 stitches left. We've made our way down with our row 3, leaving the last 2 stitches. Remembering to close off this row with just 1 back loop slip stitch. Then our increase, so 1 back loop single, 1 back loop half, and 1 back loop double, all into that last stitch. Now that our row 3 is completed, just to get started on our row 4, chain 3 and flip. Into that first stitch's back loop, our increase, so 1 back loop double, 1 back loop half, 1 back loop single. After our increase, 3 back loop slip stitches. Then 4 back loop halves, 4 back loop slips till we all have 4 stitches left. We made our way down with our row 4, leaving the last 4 stitches. Close off the row with 3 back loop slips and our increase. So 1 back loop single, 1 back loop half, 1 back loop double, all into that last stitch. We are back. Our first 4 rows are completed. Now from here, it is going to be a repeat of our 4 previous rows, again, all within the back loops, until we have a portion that can reach from mid-underarm over to the front of our body. So roughly where a bra strap or a tank top strap would lay. Then I will meet you guys back right after a repeat of our row 3, so we'll all end along the top, so we can go straight into the shoulder together from there. We are back. We have just completed our underarm portion. I have a total of 11 rows. My width is roughly 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters, and the total height of my increase end is just about 17 inches or 43 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to get started on the shoulder. So since we all should have ended along the top, we're all going to start by making a chain that is in multiples of 8 that reaches the top of our shoulder, making sure that our tail end still stays 1 inch underneath our underarm because we don't want our armhole to get any bigger. Now I went ahead and already made my chain. I needed roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I went ahead and did a chain 8. Now we now started on the following row, so once we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1 and flip. Now once we have our chain blocked off, we are then going to start with 4 slip stitches. So into that chain that we blocked off, the second chain from our hook, start with our first slip stitch. Then 1 slip stitch into each of the next 3 for a total of 4 slip stitches. Once we have our slip stitches, we are then going to do 4 half doubles. We are then going to repeat our 4 slip stitches, 4 half double crochets into every chain, making our way down our chain. Then once we reach the body, the last set of stitches that we should have done was a half double crochet. So then all we're going to do is start with 4 back loop slips, Then 4 back loop half doubles, making our way all the way down, leaving the last 4 stitches, and then I'm going to remind you how we're going to do our increase together again. So we made our way all the way down with our first shoulder row. We should have all left 4 stitches. Now we're going to increase the same exact way that we did at the end of each of our even number rows, since this is an even number row. So as a refresher, we're going to start with 3 back loop slip stitches. Then when we have our 3 back loop slips, we should all have 1 stitch left over, so we're going to do our increase. So 1 back loop single, half double double, all into that last stitch. Now our first shoulder row is complete. Now since we're here, we might as well get started on our following row, which is an odd number row. It is going to start the same way as all of our other odd number rows so far, so chain 3 and flip. We're all going to start with our increase, which is a back loop double, half and single, all into that first stitch. When we have our increase, 1 back loop slip stitch. Then 4 back loop half, 4 back loop slip stitch, making our way all the way up. So we've just made our way all the way up with our second shoulder row. Now when it comes to doing our almond stitch rows, it is going to be in multiples of 4. I know that the underarm portion wasn't in multiples of 4, but that's because we had the increases on both ends. So it kind of evened out the same. But when it comes to doing the shoulders, it is in multiples of 4 because of the blunt end. So basically, when it comes to doing any even number row for our almond stitch, it is basically going to mirror what our previous odd number row looked like. So just as an example, since this last row was an odd number row, and we should have all ended with 4 back loop half double crochets, the following row is going to start with 4 back loop half double crochets. Then when it comes to doing an odd number row, the stitches will be the opposite. So on top of all the back loop half doubles, there will be back loop slip stitches on top of there to get this texture that we've been doing so far. So to get started on the following row together, we're all going to chain 2, flip our work. Start with 4 back loop half doubles, 4 back loop slip stitches, making our way all the way down, closing off this row with the same increases that we've been doing this entire time. Then I'll meet you back at the end of the row. So we've made our way down with our third shoulder row. We did end off our row with our increase. Now from here, we're just going to do the following row. So chain 3, flip our work. Starting off this row the same way that we started off all of our other odd number rows. Then make our way all the way down, just keeping in mind that this following row stitches should be the opposite from what our previous stitches look like. Then I'll meet you back at the end of this row. So we're back and we've just completed our first 4 shoulder rows. From here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat our 4 shoulder rows until we have a portion that can reach from mid-underarm over till we're 1 inch away from the side of the base of our neck. Then I'll meet you back right after a repeat of row 2. We are back and my shoulder portion is now complete. I have a total of 18 rows. My total width is roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters, and the total height that I have is now 22 inches or 56 centimeters. Now we're going to get started with our neckline. So first things first, we're going to put this up to ourselves, and we're going to start by inserting our stitch marker into any stitch that is in multiples of 8, the depth that we'd like for our neckline to be. Now I'd like for mine to be just at about mid-chest. I needed roughly 4.5 inches or 11 centimeters, so I inserted my stitch marker into the 24th stitch from the top. Now, since we all should be along the bottom, we're going to start off our following row the same way that we've been doing this entire time. So chain 3, flip our work, start our row off with our increase. So back loop double, half and single, all into that first stitch. 1 back loop slip stitch, then repeat our 4 back loop halves, 4 back loop slip stitches all the way up until we reach our stitch marker. So we've just made our way all the way up with our neckline row. From here, this is basically going to be the same rows as the shoulder portion, but obviously a little bit shorter. So just to talk you guys through the following row, we all should have ended after slip stitches. We're going to chain 1, flip our work, start with 4 back loop slips, 4 back loop half doubles, making our way all the way down, closing off the row with our increase. We are back and our second neckline row is complete. Now since this portion is going to be a 4-row repeat again, we're going to get started on the following row the same way that we've been doing this entire time, making our way all the way up. Now as a really quick tip, the last set of stitches that we should all have is 4 back loop half double crochets, but I'll meet you guys back just to show you guys. Our third neckline row is complete. Now just to get started on the fourth one together, chain 2, flip our work. 4 back loop half doubles, 4 back loop slip stitches, making our way all the way down, closing off the row with the same increases. So we are back. We have just completed the first 4 rows for our neckline. What we're going to do from here is continue to repeat these 4 previous rows until we now have a portion that's roughly 2 inches away from the center of our chest. Then I'll meet you guys back right after a repeat of row 4, so we should all end along the bottom, then we can do the middle portion together. So we are back. The first portion of my neckline is complete. Now I have a total of 26 rows. My width is roughly 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters, and my total height that I now have is just about 25 inches or 63 centimeters. Now what we're going to do from here is the few middle rows that we're going to have. So since we should all be along the bottom, we're all going to chain one and flip our work. Now right before we get started on our first middle row, we are going to want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the edge of that last row just so we know where the slant is going to stop. Then what we're all going to do from here is our following row, but for the few middle rows that we're going to have, we aren't going to have any increases or decreases. So that's going to be pretty simple. So getting started on this following row for everyone, no matter what size we're making, we're all going to start with 2 back loop slip stitches. Now we're starting with 2, even though all of the other stitches that we have are worked in sets of 4. Because remember, we did do the increases along the bottom, and those increases just add 2 additional stitches. So right after we did our chain 1 and flipped our work, start with 2 back loop slip stitches. There's 1 into that following with a second. Then from here, 4 back loop halves, 4 back loop slip stitches to reach the end of the row. My first middle row is complete. We've made our way all the way up. Now our following row, which is an even number row, is going to mimic the same stitches that we did for our previous row, since that was an odd number row. So since the last set of stitches that we just did were back loop slip stitches, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, then work our way back down with 4 back loop slip stitches, 4 back loop half doubles, and continue repeating to reach the end of the row. Now at the end of the row, we should have 2 stitches left, then complete that with 2 back loop slip stitches, exactly the same way that we started off this row with 2 back loop slips. At the end of that row, I will meet you back. We've made our way down with our second middle row. Now we're going to do our third. Now since our third is an odd number row, we're going to do the opposite from what our previous row stitches look like. So since we're along the bottom, we're all going to chain 2, flip our work. Start with 2 back loop half doubles, then 4 back loop slips, 4 back loop half doubles to reach the end of the row. Our third middle row is complete. Now to get started on the fourth, because this portion is going to be a 4-row repeat, we're going to chain 2, flip our work. Start with 4 back loop halves, 4 back loop slips, making our way all the way down, closing off the row with 2 back loop half double crochets. Then I'll meet you back. We are back and our first 4 middle rows are complete. Now the bottom should be completely blunt, just like that. And now from here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat our 4 previous rows until we now have a portion that reaches 2 inches past mid-chest. Then I'll meet you back right after a repeat of our row 1. So that is going to be a row that ends along the top where our last 4 stitches are back loop slip stitches. Then we can continue on with the neckline and then the shoulder from there. We are back. I have just completed my few middle rows. Now I have a total of 39 rows. Now from here we're going to continue on with the neckline, but we're going to start with our decreases along the bottom. Now just as a heads up, this is what everyone's bottom should be looking like. Now from here, since we all should have ended right after a repeat of our row 1, so that was our row that ended with 4 back loop slip stitches, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work. Start with 4 back loop slip stitches again, 4 back loop half double crochets, and continue on with that until we have 4 stitches left at the end of the row. So we're back and we've just made our way all the way down, leaving the last 4 stitches. Now everyone's last set of stitches should have been just 2 back loop half double crochets, because we all should have left 4 at the end. Now what we're going to do is 1 additional back loop half double crochet, so yarn over, into that next available stitch, then into the last 3 stitches of the row, a decrease of 3 back loop double crochets. So yarn over, into that third to last back loop, pull through, second to last, pull through, and last, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. From here, yarn over, pull through the first 4 loops, yarn over, pull through 2. Now that is our first decrease row. We do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the edge of this row as well. Now we should have 2 less stitches than our previous row. Now we're all going to get started on our following decrease rows, so we're all going to chain 3 and flip. So now getting started on our following row, we're going to get started with another decrease of 3 back loop double crochets. So yarn over into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through again for a total of 5 loops on our hook. Then from here, yarn over, pull through the first 4 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, then into that following stitch, 1 back loop slip stitch. Then from here, 4 back loop half doubles, 4 back loop slip stitches to reach the end of the row. Our second decrease row is complete. So getting started on the third, we're all going to chain 2, flip our work. 4 back loop halves, 4 back loop slips till we all have 4 stitches left. So we've made our way all the way down, leaving the last 4 stitches. Now our last set of stitches should have been just 2 back loop half double crochets. Then our decrease at the end of the row is going to be the same as our previous one. It's going to be 1 back loop half double crochet, then a decrease of 3 back loop double crochets. Now this row is complete. Just to get started on the following row, we're all going to chain 3 and flip, and start this row off with a decrease of 3 back loop doubles, then 1 back loop slip stitch into that following stitch, then from here 4 back loop half doubles, 4 back loop slip stitches to reach the end of the row. We are back and our first 4 decrease rows are complete. This is what the bottom should be looking like. Now what we're going to do from here is continue to repeat our 4 previous rows until we have the same amount of rows as the rest of our neckline portion. Then we should all meet back along the top. Then we can get started on the shoulder together from there. So we are back. We have just completed the entirety of our neckline. Now we're all going to get started on our shoulder. And this is what the bottom of our piece should be looking like so far. Now, since we all should have ended along the top, what we're going to do is make a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we got started on our neckline. Now, for those of you that have my numbers, I skipped a total of 24 stitches. So on this side, I made a chain 24. All we're going to do from here is block off that last chain, do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, start with 4 slip stitches, 4 half double crochets until we reach the end of our chain. We made our way all the way down our chain with our 4 slips, 4 half doubles. Then we're just going to continue on with our stitch sequence all the way down, making sure that we close off the row with a decrease. So the following 4 stitches for everyone should be 4 back loop slips, 4 back loop half doubles. Then from here, we're basically going to be repeating this first neckline portion, but it will have more stitches because we are working on the shoulder until we have the same amount of shoulder rows as our first shoulder portion. Once we have that completed, I will meet you guys back so then we can get started on the underarm together. Now, my shoulder is complete. The total width that I have is just about 11.5 inches or 29 centimeters. Now we're going to finish up with our underarm. So first things first, insert your stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made that led up to our shoulder. For those of you that have my numbers, I made a chain 8. So along this side from the top, I inserted my stitch marker into the 8th stitch. From here, since we're all along the bottom, we're going to chain 3, flip our work. Start with our decrease of 3 back loop doubles. 1 back loop slip stitch, so the same way that we've been doing this entire time whenever we're starting with a decrease. Then do our 4 back loop halves, 4 back loop slips, making our way all the way up until we have 4 stitches left right before our stitch marker. So we're back. We've made our way all the way down, leaving 4 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now we're going to close off the row with a decrease. Now the last set of stitches that we should have done is 4 back loop half double crochets. What we're going to do into that 4th to last stitch is 1 back loop slip stitch, then a decrease of 3 back loop double crochets like we've been doing. So insert, pull through, next stitch, which should be the last, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4, yarn over, pull through 2. Then from here, chain 3 and flip our work. Now getting started on this row, we're going to start with a decrease of 3 back loop double crochets again. So in that first stitch is back loop, pull through, next, pull through, next, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4, yarn over, pull through 2. Then we're all going to do 3 back loop half double crochets. So yarn over into that next stitch with 1 back loop half, another back loop half, then another back loop half. Then from here, continue on with our 4 back loop slip stitches, 4 back loop half double crochets till we have 4 stitches left. We made our way down with our second underarm row, leaving the last 4 stitches. Now to close off this row, we're going to do 1 back loop half double crochet into the 4th to last, then a decrease of 3 back loop double crochets. Now our second underarm row is complete. From here, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of underarm rows that we started this piece off with. Once we do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back. So we are back. The entirety of our front panel is complete. Now my total width is roughly 14 inches or 35 centimeters. Once we have this completed, we can all get started on the back panel. Now the back panel is going to be done pretty much the same way as the front panel, but we are not going to have that cutout. So just as a refresher, we're going to start by making the same chain and do the same amount of underarm rows, making sure we are still increasing on both sides. Same shoulder. Then what we're going to do from there is just work our almond stitch rows, making sure we're still increasing into the bottom of our piece, and we're going to have the same middle rows as well, from the first shoulder row all the way across to the last shoulder row. Now just to show you guys for the back, we are still going to have our same middle rows for the back panel that don't have any increases or decreases. Then we're going to complete this with our underarm portion the same way that we just did the front panel. Once we have that completed, I'll meet you guys back so we can seam it all together. So now that we've just completed both the front and the back panel, we're going to need to seam everything together. First things first, we're all going to need to make sure that we're placing our front panel on top of our back panel, making sure that everything is flipped wrong side out. Now, as you guys can see, there is a very clear front panel and back panel. The back of the piece looks like little bulges. The front looks like little divots. So making sure that the divots are faced in on each other, we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then all we're going to do is a single crochet seam. So we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row. So finding our first side row, which is this one for me, I'm going to find that top loop, insert into that front panel, find the same top loop within the back panel, insert into there, starting with just 1 single crochet. My next top loop within the following side row, insert, following top loop within the next side row within the back panel, insert and single crochet, and we're just going to continue to do this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut and repeat on the other side. So now that we have just finished up seaming the shoulders, we're now going to seam up the sides. So we're going to make sure that our work is still flipped wrong side out, meaning the seams that we just did for the shoulders are still along the outside. We're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of our underarm portion, not into the bottom of the piece. Then we're going to do a single crochet seam, making our way all the way up. So go ahead and insert your yarn onto your hook. We're going to pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now we're just going to find that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet around everything. Let's do that again. Next stitch into the front, next stitch into the back, and single crochet, and just continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut and repeat on the other side. Alright, so now that everything is all seamed together, the next we're going to do is our side detail. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to start by inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of our piece, making sure that when we do our following single crochet row, it's going to show the front of the single crochets. So inserting my hook into my stitch marker side row, we're going to work our way up towards the side seam, putting 2 single crochets into every side row. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out because we don't need that anymore. We're going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 just to secure. Into this same side row, we're going to start by inserting with 2 single crochets. So insert with 1, into the same side row with a second. This is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop, then insert with 2 singles. There's 1, and then there's 2, and that's basically it. We're just going to continue with 2 single crochets into every side row until we reach our side seam. So we've just made our way all the way up with our single crochets until we reached our side seam. We're going to insert our stitch marker into that last stitch on this side of the side seam. Then we're going to do the same thing, working our way back down. But doing our first single crochet on the other side of our side seam, we're going to insert a stitch marker into there as well. So since this is my side seam, just find our following side row. This is mine right here. Insert with 1 single crochet, and then into that same side row with a second single crochet. But we do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into that first single crochet that we made, so we know where our 2 middle stitches are. Continue with our 2 single crochets into every side row until you reach the end of the row, and then I'll meet you back. So we've made our way all the way down with our single crochets, and now we're going to do a back loop slip stitch row. So we're going to chain 1 and flip our work. So making our way down, finding our first stitch's back loop, insert, yarn over, pull through everything. Again, next stitch's back loop, yarn over, pull through everything. From here, continue with 1 back loop slip stitch, making our way all the way up and back down the other side, making sure that we're inserting our stitch markers into our same 2 middle stitches, and then I'll meet you back. We are back. Our back loop slip stitch row is complete. Now our following row is going to be a back loop half double crochet row. we're going to start and end the row off with a decrease of 2 back loop half doubles. So what we're going to do is yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4. Then from here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving 3 stitches right before our middle stitch marker stitch. So we are back. We've made our way all the way up with our back loop half doubles, leaving 3 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now we're all going to do a decrease of 4 back loop half double crochets. So start with the yarn over, into that next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, then into our stitch marker stitch, in through that back loop still, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through everything on our hook, and we do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top of that stitch. Now we're going to do the same decrease into our following stitches as well, and these are going to be our 2 middle stitches. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out of that following stitch, start with the yarn over, into that next stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, into the next, pull through, and into the next, pull through again for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 6, and insert a stitch marker into the top of that stitch. From here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2. We've made our way down, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now we're going to close off the row with a decrease of 2 back loop halves. So yarn over, into that second to last back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4. From here, it is going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows. So like I said, all we're going to do is continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we have a portion, just like how we have on this side, that just makes its way all the way down in a straight line. Then I'll meet you guys back right after a half double crochet row. Mine made our way all the way down until we made almost a whole point, and then I'll meet you back so we can seam it all together. So we are back. I've just made my way all the way down with my side detail. Now, this may be a little bit different for everyone, but just to let you guys know, I have a total of 25 rows. Now we're just going to seam it up. So this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam to make it look like another back loop slip stitch row. So we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Pull our yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then we're all going to start by finding that first stitch into the front panel and insert only in through that front loop. Then we're going to find that next stitch into the back panel, insert only in through that back loop. Then when we have these 3 loops on our hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. Let's do this again. Into that next stitch, insert in through that front loop. Next stitch, insert in through that back loop. Yarn over, pull through all 3, and that's it. We're just going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut and repeat on the other side. So now that we have finished up our side detail, we're next going to do our sleeve. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to insert our hook into the side row that we have that's nearest to our side seam within the armhole. Then all we're going to do is a single crochet row. Now since we already know how to do these, I'm just going to talk you guys through it. All we're going to do is put 2 single crochets into every side row, 1 single crochet into every stitch, and just make your way all the way up and around. And we do need to make sure that this single crochet row is working clockwise or to the left because we want to show the front of the single crochet row. So our single crochet row is complete. Now that it is complete, we're going to get started on our following row, which is a back loop slip stitch row. So right after we have slip stitched into that chain space, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work. Simply put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and then I'll meet you back at the following row. So we are back. We have just completed our first 2 rows for our sleeve. Now the following row is going to be technically a half double crochet row, but we're going to start with a decrease, and we're going to have some single crochets along the bottom so that we can have a curve over our shoulder. So for everyone, no matter what size we're making, we're going to start with a decrease of 2 back loop single crochets. So after we have flipped our work, we're going to find that first stitch from our previous row, insert into that back loop, pull through, back loop, pull through for 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 3. Then from here, we're all going to do 10 back loop single crochets. Again, it's the same for every size. Now that we have our 10 back loop single crochets, we're now going to do one back loop half double crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way up and over, leaving the last 12 stitches for everyone, no matter what size we're making. So we're back. We've made our way all the way up and around with our back loop half doubles, leaving the last 12 stitches. Now from here, we're going to be putting 10 back loop single crochets into the rest of our stitches. That should leave us with the last 2. I'll meet you back when we have the last 2 so we can do our decrease together. So we've just did our back loop single crochets, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now we're going to do a decrease of 2 back loop singles, just like how we started off with. So into that second to last back loop, pull through, last stitches back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3, then slip stitch into that chain space, chain 1, flip our work, then continue to repeat these 2 previous rows. All we're going to do is continue to repeat these 2 rows until we have a portion that is nice and snug on our arm. Now we will add more length to it so that it can completely cover the shoulder, but we're mainly just making sure that we don't have a buckle when we close our arm once when it's on. So I'll meet you guys back right after a slip stitch row when it is snug, making sure it's not too tight, not too loose, and then I'll meet you guys back. So we are back. We have just completed the decrease portion of our sleeve. I have a total of 14 rows. My length is roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to do basically the same thing that we've been doing, but without the decreases because it's already snug, until we have a portion that can reach over our shoulder and lay horizontally on our arm. So since we all should have ended right after a slip stitch row, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work. Start the row off with 10 back loop single crochets. 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving 10. Then into those last 10 stitches, 1 back loop single crochet into each of those stitches. So for these following rows, we aren't going to do any increases or decreases. Then the row after that is going to be like our previous slip stitch rows, so just 1 slip stitch into every stitch. Now we're going to do those 2 rows until we now have a portion, like I said, that can lay completely horizontally on our arm once when it's on. Once we have that completed, I'll meet you guys back right after a slip stitch row so then we can work on the length together. We are back and the total shoulder portion of my sleeve is complete. I have a total of 28 rows now. My length is roughly 4 inches or 8 centimeters. Now from here, all we're going to do is just work on the length of our sleeve. So that's going to be super duper simple. I'm just going to talk you guys through it. We all should have ended right after a back loop slip stitch row. Everyone's following row is just going to be a back loop half double crochet row. So we're going to chain 2, flip our work. Simply put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way around. Once we've made our way all the way around, slip stitch into that second chain to close off the row. Chain 1, flip our work, then do our same back loop slip stitch row, again with no increases, no decreases. So this length portion won't have any increases or decreases either. Once we have a portion that can reach all the way down to about 1 inch above our elbow, I will meet you guys back right after a slip stitch row. We are back and I've just completed the length of our sleeve. Now I have a total of 50 rows. This length is just about 10 inches or 25 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to get started on the cuff. But first things first, we're going to need to do a single crochet row. So since everyone's last row should have been a slip stitch row, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, and just put 1 single crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of that row. We are back. We have just made our way all the way around with our single crochet row. Now we're going to get started on our cuff. So our cuff is just going to be back loop slip stitch rows. So right after we've slip stitched into that chain space, we're all going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our cuff to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 8 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 8. Then once we have our chain, we are going to block off that last chain and chain 1. Then into that chain that we blocked off, the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. And we still want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly after every stitch, but from here continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. We've put 1 slip stitch into every chain. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So just finding that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. Then in order to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again. So finding the last stitch from our previous row, not working into any of those slip stitches into the base, find that back loop, pull through everything, and continue this to reach the end of the row. Then at the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. So we've made our way down with our row 3, now we're going to connect it into the base. So it's going to be done the same way as our previous row, so just finding that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. Still doesn't count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base, flip our work, and repeat. Continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet you back so we can seam it. So we are back. We've just made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now all we're going to do is our outside loop slip stitch seam. Now this seam is going to be done exactly the same way as our side detail, so just to talk you guys through it, since I already did mine, we're going to make sure that our work is slipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to do our outside loop slip stitch seam so we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So now that we have just seamed up our cuffs, we're ready to finish up with our collar. So first things first, making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're going to insert our hook into any one of the siders that we have along the back of our neckline. Then we're going to work our way across with 1 single crochet into every side row. We're going to pull our working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then put 1 single crochet into every side row. So finding our first side row, this is mine right here, I'm going to find that top loop and insert starting with just 1 single crochet. This is my following side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with just 1 single crochet again. Let's do that once more. This divot is my following side row, so find that top loop and insert with 1. From here, continue with 1 single crochet into every side row. Once we reach the front panel, 1 single crochet into every stitch. Working our way across our front panel again, 1 single crochet into every side row, and just make our way all the way around with our single crochet row. So now that we've made our way all the way around with our single crochet row, we're now just going to do a slip stitch band, the same way that we did the cuff for our collar. So right after we slip stitch into that chain space, we're all going to make a chain the length that we'd like for the collar to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm start by making a chain 6, then do our back loop slip stitch rows, make our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches left, I'll meet you back to seam it up. Alrighty, our collar is complete. Now we're going to seam this up using the same outside loop slip stitch seam that we did for the side detail and for the cuffs. So we're going to make sure the work is flipped right side out, right side up. Seam everything together, then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Then we'll be done. Last thing we're going to have to do from here is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!